A few days in my life have changed me as much as the day my father, James, died suddenly at the age of 55. My father didn't talk much, and he didn't show off his money. So, when we heard his will, my mother Amy, my sister Kelly, and I were shocked. The lawyer told us that my father had left behind $100 million, an amount we never expected. As the oldest son, I always thought I would take over my father's small business and continue his work. But the will not only showed his hidden wealth, it also divided the money in a way that gave much more to Kelly and me than to our mother. This news caused a lot of trouble in our family. My mother, Amy, who was 50 at the time, was heartbroken. She couldn't understand how her husband of 25 years had made so much money without her knowing or why he gave it out so strangely. Her sadness quickly turned into doubt and anger. She started to question if the will was real, feeling like she had been left out of a life she had always been a part of. This shook her trust and sense of security deeply. In the middle of this, Kelly, who was 28, stayed unusually calm. It seemed like she might have known more about our father's plans than she first said. Her calmness made things even more tense between her and our mother. As for me, I felt stuck. I was caught between my mother's disbelief and the shocking reality of our new financial situation. I wondered why my father kept these secrets and what led him to divide his wealth in such a strange way. The inheritance, instead of feeling like a gift, felt more like a curse that could tear our family apart. The will became the center of arguments, with each of us dealing with shock and confusion in our own way. Soon, my mother decided to challenge the will in court. Our home, once a place of love and togetherness, became a battlefield filled with secrets and shifting loyalties. Throughout it all, I struggled with my own feelings, trying to hold on to my love for my family while also dealing with this difficult situation. I respected my mother, but I also wanted to honor my father's final wishes. This argument over the inheritance brought up deep problems in our family, making us question the strength of our relationships. It made me realize that the money my father left could change our lives, but at what cost? That answer seemed more and more troubling as we prepared for a legal fight none of us really wanted. With each step, we felt more and more of what we had lost since that shocking day. After finding out about my father James's will, we were hit with a rush of emotions and legal documents. My mother, Amy, overwhelmed by grief and disbelief, decided to challenge the will. She couldn't understand how my father had secretly saved up $100 million, and she couldn't accept that he left most of it to my sister and me, leaving her with much less. She didn't think the will was genuine. With the help of Mr. Charles, our family lawyer, my mother started a legal battle that soon took over our lives. The courtroom became the place where all of our family's private matters were exposed. Each session revealed more about our personal and financial lives than we ever wanted. My mother's case was built on several points. She questioned whether my father was mentally fit to make these decisions when he wrote the will and suggested that maybe someone had influenced him. She even wondered if the will was fake because of the sudden discovery of his wealth and how it was divided. Every court session was emotionally exhausting. I stood by my mother, not completely sure about her doubts, but I supported her because I understood her need for answers. My sister, Kelly, kept to herself more and more. She argued that our father had every right to split his money the way he wanted, and questioning him was both wrong and pointless. As the legal case dragged on, the tension in our family grew worse. The public nature of the court case drew the attention of the media, turning our personal struggle into a story for everyone to watch. Reporters dug into my father's past, discovering his quiet investments and business deals that had stayed hidden for years. This media attention made everything even harder to bear. Through all of this, Mr. Charles was a steady presence. His knowledge of family law and his calm approach helped us get through the chaos, even though his efforts to mediate were often overshadowed by the strong emotions that came out with every new piece of information. The legal fight also made me rethink what I knew about my father. Each court session, with each new fact about his hidden life, painted a different picture of the man I thought I knew. I thought I knew my father, but maybe I never really did. The mystery around this inheritance, with all its legal complications, became a symbol of lost connections and hidden truths in our family. Throughout it all, my mother stayed strong. She fought the case not just for her share of the money, but to find the truth about the man she loved and the life they built together. This battle, though full of legal issues, was really about finding out who we were and wanting to be recognized in the shadow of a legacy that suddenly felt both mysterious and huge. The fight over my father's will not only revealed his hidden financial life but also started to change how we related to each other as a family. As the legal case continued, my sister Kelly's views began to change, creating more distance between us. At first, Kelly was as surprised as the rest of us by what the will revealed. But as time went on, she started to agree with what our father had written. Kelly, who was 28, began to believe that our father had reasons for the choices he made in his will. She thought his decisions were intentional, maybe to teach us lessons we hadn't yet learned. This put Kelly in direct conflict with our mother, Amy, who felt betrayed and confused by being left out of the large part of the inheritance. The tension between them grew quickly. Family gatherings turned into arguments about the will, loyalty, and grief. Kelly accused our mother of not respecting our father's right to make his own decisions, while our mother felt hurt by Kelly's lack of empathy and her ignoring the emotional pain the will had caused. As Kelly pulled away from our mother, our once close family started to fall apart. Their relationship, once warm, became cold and distant, which was painful to see. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace between them while dealing with my own mixed feelings about the inheritance and what it all meant. Kelly's new attitude also affected our relationship. We had always been close as siblings, facing challenges together. But now, the disagreement over the inheritance showed that we had different ideas about money, responsibility, and loyalty to the family. Kelly's determination to claim what she believed our father had left for her created a surprising divide between us. Her arguments even made me rethink my own views on the situation. I started to think that maybe our father wanted this challenge to push us to grow or change. It was a hard and lonely thought because it made me feel distant from both my mother, who was focused on getting justice, and Kelly, who seemed to accept the will's terms more practically. As time went on, the inheritance issue took over our lives, overshadowing everything else in our family. The legal fight, fueled by these family conflicts, drew attention not only from close friends and family but also from the community and the media. This public attention added more stress to our already difficult relationships. In this emotional atmosphere, I found myself thinking more about what inheritance and legacy really meant. The fight forced us to face some uncomfortable truths about our family, our values, and ourselves. As Kelly moved further away from our mother emotionally, it became clear that whatever the outcome of this battle, our family would never be the same. The scars from this conflict seemed likely to affect our relationships and lives for a long time. As the inheritance fight went on, Mr. Charles, our family lawyer, became a key figure. He wasn't just a legal advisor, he got deeply involved in both the emotional and legal sides of our crisis. His experience and calm approach were very helpful as he tried to find a way to save both our family bonds and our financial interests. From the start, Mr. Charles knew this was more than just about money. It was about a grieving family dealing with the loss of a father and the surprising terms of his will. His approach was thoughtful and caring, as he tried to mediate between us while making sure the legal process was fair and careful. Mr. Charles focused on keeping communication open between all family members. He organized meetings where we could talk freely, not just with immediate family, but also with relatives affected by the situation. These meetings allowed us to express our feelings in a less formal way than in court. Mr. Charles listened carefully to everyone. He paid special attention to my mother, who felt left out by the will, and he also talked to Kelly and me, trying to understand why our father made these choices. His ability to handle these conversations with care was important in keeping things from getting worse. On the legal side, Mr. Charles used his expertise to look at all possible outcomes of the case. He made sure we understood all the options, guiding us through this tough situation. Mr. Charles explained all the possible outcomes, from completely canceling the will to fully following its terms, and talked us through the legal consequences and how long each might take. This clarity helped us understand what to expect in the long run, including both the financial and emotional costs. Another important step Mr. Charles took was bringing in independent experts. These included forensic accountants to review my father's financial activities and estate planning experts to help explain why the will might have been structured the way it was. This well-rounded approach not only helped us understand the legal situation better but also provided more insight into my father's choices, which helped calm some of the anger in the family. Throughout it all, Mr. Charles remained a calm and steady presence. His support was reassuring, offering a sense of balance during emotional moments. His mediation efforts didn't always lead to immediate solutions, but they brought a needed level of professionalism and care. As time went on, Mr. Charles became more than just a lawyer. He became someone we could trust, guiding our family through one of the hardest times we had ever faced. Although the outcome of the legal battle was still unclear, his work ensured that whatever happened, the process would respect everyone's dignity and emotional health. In the middle of this legal fight and shifting family dynamics, my role as the eldest son became more complicated. I wasn't just trying to handle the inheritance issues. I was also trying to keep our family from falling apart. It was a tough challenge. On one side was my mother, Amy, heartbroken and feeling betrayed by the will, and on the other was my sister, Kelly, who saw our father's decisions differently than we did. As I watched our family struggle, I often wondered about my father's intentions. Could he have predicted the chaos his will would cause? Or did he think that the financial security he provided would be more important than the emotional toll? These thoughts stayed with me as I tried to hold our family together. The $100 million estate, which should have been a blessing, felt like a curse. Greed and distrust had taken over our relationships, replacing the warmth and trust we once had. Each new legal update or discovery seemed to drive a bigger wedge between us, with family members taking sides in what felt like a personal and painful battle. My efforts to bring peace were met with mixed responses. My mother, hurt and confused, leaned on me for support. My mother's pain made her hesitant to engage in any conversations that might seem to go against her fight over the will. Kelly, on the other hand, viewed my attempts at keeping the peace with some suspicion, thinking I wasn't fully supporting our father's wishes. This balancing act between the two was emotionally and mentally draining for me. To try and understand both sides, I arranged private talks with each family member. I listened without judging and spoke carefully to avoid causing more hurt. I encouraged us to openly talk about how we felt about the inheritance and our memories of our father, hoping we could find some common ground in our shared loss. I also sought advice from Mr. Charles, our lawyer, on how to handle the legal issues without tearing our family apart. His guidance was very helpful, giving me a better understanding of the legal process and helping me explain it to my family without adding to the tension. The media attention only made things worse. Reporters were eager to turn our situation into a dramatic story of a rich family in conflict. This unwanted attention put even more pressure on us. I found myself having to protect my mother and sister from intrusive questions and photographers, which made my role as the family protector even more complicated. Despite everything, I held on to the hope that we could find a solution that respected both my father's wishes and the needs of our family. This hope was tested over and over as the case dragged on. Every court session and legal argument seemed to push us further apart. Deep down, I knew that the real battle wasn't just over the millions my father left behind, it was about the legacy of our family's unity and the values we wanted to hold on to. The struggle to maintain that unity during all the chaos of greed and grief defined my role as a brother and a son during this difficult time. Just when we thought we understood the situation with the $100 million inheritance, a new twist made things even more complicated. Further investigation into my father's finances revealed that he had hidden more assets in various investments and offshore accounts. This discovery shocked us all, making us question even more what we thought we knew about my father and his legacy. The forensic accountants Mr. Charles had hired as part of the legal case uncovered these hidden assets. They found that the $100 million estate was only part of a larger collection of wealth my father had carefully hidden. The reasons behind my father's secrecy became an even bigger mystery, complicating both our emotions and the legal strategies surrounding the will. As the eldest son and a key figure trying to keep the family together, this new revelation made my role even harder to manage. I found myself at the center of this new situation. The discovery had two effects. It made the greed and conflict among our extended family worse, while also offering a chance for a fairer solution within our immediate family if handled properly. The newly found assets were quite varied, from real estate in different countries to investments in private companies and large stock portfolios. This changed everything about the inheritance fight, making us rethink our legal strategy. Mr. Charles suggested that this might be a good time to negotiate a settlement that could make everyone happier and possibly calm the growing tension within the family. However, the negotiations were far from easy. With more assets on the table, there was even more to argue about, and tensions rose as each family member reconsidered their position. My mother, already suspicious about the will, became even more convinced that her exclusion was a personal betrayal. Kelly, on the other hand, saw this as more proof of our father's wisdom and planning, believing it showed how he intended to provide for us in unconventional ways. My role became even more complicated as I tried to manage the emotional conflicts in the family and the legal issues surrounding the new assets. I still hoped to find a solution that could bring peace to the family, but with each new discovery, that goal seemed further out of reach. The negotiations over the additional assets went through several rounds of discussions, led by Mr. Charles. He not only gave legal advice but also tried to understand and manage the family dynamics. These talks were difficult and often emotional, as old hurts were brought up and new suspicions formed. Through all of this, the idea of legacy took on a different meaning for me. It wasn't just about the money my father left behind anymore, it was about the memories and values tied to that wealth. The newly found assets highlighted the gap between the father I thought I knew and the businessman who had operated in such secrecy. As we moved forward, the challenge was to balance his role as a family man with his secret financial life, which made it hard for us to come together and heal. The path to resolution was filled with both legal and emotional challenges, but it was one we had to walk carefully, balancing the realities of wealth with the emotional ties of family. The court proceedings, already complicated by the financial discoveries, became more personal during the testimonies. These court sessions revealed the deep cracks in our family that had been hidden for years, and emotions ran high as we tried to untangle my father's true intentions. As the eldest son, this made the process even more intense and personal for me. I watched with a heavy heart as each family member took the stand. The courtroom, filled with lawyers, reporters, and curious onlookers, was a harsh setting for the raw emotions my mother Amy and my sister Kelly showed. Each testimony revealed their pain, hopes, and feelings of betrayal. My mother's testimony was especially heartbreaking. She spoke about her life with my father, James, describing what she thought was a partnership built on respect and shared decisions. Her voice cracked as she talked about the later years of their marriage when James became more secretive. At the time, she thought it was just the stress of his business, but now she believed it was related to the secret wealth he had been accumulating. She expressed feeling betrayed not only by the will but by their entire marriage, which she now saw in a different light. Kelly's view was very different. When it was her turn, she defended our father's decisions, saying he was not only securing the family's financial future but also challenging us. She believed he wanted us to rise above our personal conflicts and handle his legacy with maturity and grace. Her testimony was confident and composed, but it did little to ease the tension between her and our mother. During my own testimony, I tried to offer a balanced perspective, acknowledging both my mother's pain and what I thought might have been my father's intentions. I spoke about the man I knew, a loving father and a smart businessman who may not have realized how his secret financial planning would affect us emotionally. I also brought up the newly discovered assets, stressing the need for a clear and fair solution that would honor his complex legacy without further tearing our family apart. Mr. Charles, our lawyer, played a key role during these sessions. He carefully navigated the legal details and emotional issues with skill, understanding our family in a way few others could. His goal wasn't just to win the case but to help mend our family if possible. The emotional weight of these testimonies was huge. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker, with old hurts and unresolved problems coming to the surface. The process was cathartic in some ways but also incredibly damaging. Relationships that had taken years to build were breaking apart before our eyes, held together only by the fragile hope of finding a solution that could address both the emotional and financial needs of everyone involved. The impact of these testimonies went beyond the courtroom. They became the focus of media attention, turning our personal pain into a public spectacle. This extra layer of exposure only made the stress and anxiety worse for all of us. We all felt overwhelmed, making the legal process even harder to bear. As the court sessions continued, it became clear that the outcome of this battle would change our family forever. No matter what the final decision would be, the emotional scars would last, and we would have to figure out how to move forward after dealing with a legacy as complicated as the man who left it behind. As the inheritance fight dragged on, the chance of a peaceful settlement seemed to fade. We had started with a small hope of reaching a compromise that would help us avoid the bitterness of a long court case. But as everyone held firm to their positions, the negotiations fell apart. What had begun as hopeful discussions turned into failed attempts that only made the divides in our family worse. At first, there were some positive moments. Mr. Charles, our family lawyer, arranged several mediation sessions to encourage dialogue and work toward a fair solution. We talked about different options for dividing the $100 million and the other assets that had been uncovered. Each of us, my mother Amy, my sister Kelly, and I brought our own views and emotions to these talks. My mother was firm in her belief that she had been wronged by being left out of the will and deserved a large share of the estate, not just for the money but also as a matter of respect. She felt even more strongly about this after learning about the hidden assets, which she saw as further proof of deceit. Kelly, however, continued to support our father's wishes as written in the will. She saw it as a reflection of his understanding of each of us and believed we should honor it. My role in these talks was incredibly hard. I tried to find a middle ground between my mother and Kelly, suggesting different ways to divide the assets that could address both legal and emotional concerns. But every compromise I offered only seemed to highlight how far apart we were. Kelly saw these ideas as going against our father's wishes, while my mother saw them as necessary to correct a wrong. The mediation sessions often ended in frustration and tears, with each of us retreating to our own sides. The emotional strain was clear on everyone. The stress made old wounds worse and created new ones, making it harder and harder to have a rational discussion. The intense media attention that followed each session added even more pressure, turning our private pain into public drama. Mr. Charles's role grew from just being a legal advisor to being an emotional support for all of us. Despite his best efforts, the possibility of finding common ground seemed to slip away a little more each day. The combination of legal complexities, the large amount of money involved, and the deep emotions of everyone made the situation incredibly difficult to resolve. The failure of the negotiations made everyone more firm in their positions, creating barriers that seemed impossible to overcome. When the talks broke down, it marked a turning point for our family. It became clear that we would need the court to decide the outcome. This was hard to accept because it didn't just mean the failure to reach a compromise, but it also felt like the end of any chance of family unity. As we prepared for the court proceedings to continue, there was a sense of resignation and determination. The stakes were higher than ever, not just in terms of money, but also in the lasting impact this legal battle would have on our relationships. A court ruling seemed inevitable, but it didn't offer much hope for healing the divisions that had come to define how we interacted. After months of emotional testimonies, failed talks, and deep legal scrutiny, the day of the final verdict arrived. This was the moment that would decide how my father's $100 million estate, along with the newly discovered assets, would be divided. It would also reshape the dynamics of our family. The tension was thick as we entered the courtroom, each of us feeling a mix of fear and hope. As the judge began to speak, the room went silent. The verdict would not only settle the legal dispute over the inheritance but also mark the start of a new chapter for our family. This chapter might bring us back together or permanently break the fragile bonds that still connected us. The judge acknowledged the complexity of the case, noting how deeply emotions had influenced the entire process. The decision considered the many legal arguments presented, the personal testimonies that revealed much about our relationships, and the possible effects on family unity. The verdict was more balanced than we had expected. It didn't completely favor any one side but offered a compromise that aimed to address the concerns raised by everyone. The judge ordered a redistribution of the assets that was different from what my father's will had laid out. My mother, Amy, was given a significant portion, recognizing her role in my father's success and the unfairness of her being excluded. Kelly received a large share as well, but with conditions to ensure the responsible management of the wealth, reflecting her focus on preserving our father's legacy and business values. As for me, I was given the responsibility of overseeing certain parts of the estate, with the task of balancing our father's business legacy while making sure that all family members were fairly supported. The verdict also required us to attend family counseling as part of the estate settlement, recognizing the deep emotional wounds that needed healing beyond the legal matters. This showed the judge understood that the issues we faced weren't just about money, but about the very core of our family relationships. When we left the courtroom, the mood was quiet and heavy. There was some relief that the legal fight was over, but the emotional weight was still there. Kelly, Amy, and I exchanged tired looks, knowing that while the court had made its decision, the journey to emotional healing and real reconciliation was just beginning. In the days after the verdict, we took small steps toward understanding and possibly forgiveness. The required counseling sessions weren't so much about the will anymore, but about years of miscommunication and unspoken feelings. Slowly, we began to see each other not as enemies in a legal fight but as family members who had all lost something irreplaceable: the trust and simplicity we once shared before the will was revealed. The court's decision had definitely changed our family dynamics, creating new rules for how we would interact and handle financial matters. But it also gave us a small hope that, over time, we might rebuild something stronger from the conflict. The final ruling on the inheritance brought both an end and new challenges. It closed the chapter on our bitter legal battle over my father's $100 million estate but opened a time for reflection and rebuilding as we moved forward. One of the biggest lessons we learned from this experience was the importance of being open with each other. The secrecy around my father's finances had been a major cause of the conflict. From now on, we committed to being more transparent about financial matters, making sure no family member would ever feel left out or surprised again. This openness extended beyond just money. It included having more honest conversations about our expectations and concerns as a family. Another important lesson was the value of good legal and financial planning. The complicated issues that came up during the court case showed us the need for clear, well-documented estate plans that take into account not just legal rules, but also the emotional and relational needs of the family. We learned that estate planning shouldn't be done in secret but should involve everyone affected. This way, misunderstandings can be avoided, and there would be a clear plan for future generations. The required family counseling sessions ended up being a turning point for us. They taught us the importance of addressing issues before they grow into big problems. Through these sessions, we began to better understand each other's perspectives and concerns, which helped us start the healing process. We realized that truly listening to each other was just as important as any legal document for keeping family peace. This experience also showed us that wealth can be both a blessing and a burden. We saw how money could create opportunities but also cause conflict and unhappiness. This made us rethink our values as a family. We started to focus more on our relationships and shared experiences instead of just material things. We understood that the real legacy we wanted to leave behind was one built on mutual respect and support. As we put these lessons into practice, new beginnings started to form. Amy, Kelly, and I began to build a different kind of relationship, one that was more careful and thoughtful, but also more mature. We created new traditions and routines that allowed us to spend time together without the weight of past conflicts hanging over us. We also began working together on charitable projects, using part of the inheritance to support causes that mattered to us. These efforts helped repair our family bonds and gave us a way to honor my father's legacy in a positive way. Working on these projects gave us a shared purpose and helped shift our focus from what we had fought over to what we could accomplish together. Looking back, it was clear that while the inheritance battle had been painful, it also taught us important lessons. We learned about resilience, the complexity of family relationships, and the power of forgiveness. As we moved forward, these lessons became the foundation of our new start, leading us toward a future that, while different from what we had imagined, offered the hope of unity and mutual respect.